Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into a brand new explainer. And oh man, do we have a truly fascinating historical investigation lined up for you. We're looking at the Taj Mahal. You know it, you love it. It's a universally admired masterpiece of world heritage. But we aren't just going to rehash its well-known history as a magnificent 17th century Mughal mausoleum. Nope. Instead, we're tackling the persistent, highly debated controversy surrounding it. We're going to impartially investigate the Tejo Mahalaya hypothesis. This is a revisionist theory claiming that this iconic marble monument was actually a pre-existing Hindu temple. It's this wild collision of history, architecture, and modern politics. So let's jump right in. Welcome to this cinematic deep dive explainer. Today, we're investigating one of history's absolute biggest, most hotly debated mysteries. We're talking about a monument that is recognized globally, literally all over the world, yet it's surrounded by this incredibly captivating alternative narrative. The world knows the Taj Mahal through the romantic, tragically beautiful story of Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal. But what if another claim were true? What if there's an entirely different layer to this iconic structure? Now, we aren't here to validate the controversy as fact right out of the gate, but as focused learners, we are absolutely here to examine the evidence. So let's look closely at the claims, the science, and the history. Okay, let's dive into this because this whole modern debate really caught the public's imagination recently over one very specific, very intriguing mystery. 22 locked rooms. Literally, in 2022, a legal petition was filed demanding that the Archaeological Survey of India open up a series of sealed basement rooms beneath the Taj Mahal. The petitioners wanted to find out if these rooms were secretly hiding Hindu idols or ancient inscriptions. I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a thriller, right? People were genuinely asking, what exactly is locked away in the dark down there? And let's be honest, nothing fuels a theory quite like a locked door in a basement. Well, the Indian judicial system had a very firm answer to that. The Supreme Court of India ultimately dismissed this modern attempt to unearth hidden idols, famously tossing the petition out as mere publicity interest litigation. The courts basically ruled that these are non-justiciable issues, things that should be debated by academicians and historians, not decided by a judge. But here's the really fascinating part. Even though the Supreme Court quickly shut down this specific legal maneuver, the underlying theory fueling it absolutely continues to thrive in the public imagination. To understand why it thrives, we really need to clearly juxtapose the two competing narratives we're analyzing today. On the one hand, we have the established historical record, a 17th century Mughal mausoleum commissioned by Emperor Shah Jahan in memory of his favorite wife, Mumtaz Mahal, which seamlessly blends Persian, Ottoman, and Indian styles. But on the other hand, we have the revisionist theory popularized by 𝐂𝐿𝐻𝐿. According to this narrative, the Taj Mahal is actually Tejo Mahalaya, a 12th century Shiva temple and palace that was simply commandeered from a Hindu ruler and converted into a tomb. Let's trace exactly how this developed over time. Back in 1632, historical records note the burial of Mumtaz. And for centuries, that origin story was pretty much unchallenged. But then, jump forward to 1989. 𝐂𝐿𝐻𝐿 publishes his book, The Taj Mahal is Tejo Mahalaya, a Shiva temple, formally outlining this theory. And this 20th century publication, it spread like wildfire. By 2015, a civil suit was filed in Agra asking to allow Hindu worship inside the Taj. And that leads us right up to the 2022 Supreme Court dismissal we just talked about. So we're really looking at how a 17th century event evolved into a massive 21st century cultural and legal battleground. Section 1. What do we know? The established history. Okay, let's dive right into this. Before we can even look at alternative theories, we really need to understand what mainstream history actually tells us. According to mainstream historians and widespread archaeological consensus, the Taj Mahal is a mausoleum built in the 1600s by Shah Jahan for his wife, Mumtaz Mahal. And this narrative? It's backed by extensive Mughal-era records, contemporary accounts from foreign travelers who were actually there, and the classic, unmistakable hallmarks of Mughal architecture. This is the established foundation that the entire academic world relies upon. Moving on to Section 2, the Tejo Mahalaya and 𝐂𝐿𝐻𝐿's claim. So history is rarely without its challengers, right? And in the 20th century, we encounter this vastly different, highly disruptive theory. Enter 𝐂𝐿𝐻𝐿, an Indian writer who published a book titled Taj Mahal, The True Story. Supporters of this theory basically argue that Shah Jahan didn't build the monument from scratch. Instead, they claim he acquired an older, pre-Mughal Hindu temple palace known as Tejo Mahalaya and converted it into a tomb. This theory heavily relies on alternative linguistic interpretations, specifically the claim that the name Taj Mahal is just a corruption of the Sanskrit name Tejo Mahalaya, alongside some very specific architectural observations. Now, what's really interesting about this side-by-side comparison is how it perfectly splits these two entirely different narratives so we can look at them clearly. On one hand, you've got a 17th century Mughal mausoleum built from the ground up. On the other, Oak's claim of an ancient, repurposed Hindu temple. Seeing these side-by-side helps us act as neutral investigators, allowing us to objectively look at the evidence for both claims without any bias. Section 2, analyzing the architectural claims. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is how we shift from the ancient texts to the physical stones themselves. Oak supporters argue that if you look closely at the architecture, it bears the distinct imprints of classic Hindu temple design. So let's detail these specific claims. Theirs point to the arrangement of the 5 domes, calling it a Hindu Pancha-Ratna, or 5-jewel shrine arrangement. They also highlight the inverted lotus canopy topping the domes, noting the lotus is a deeply sacred Hindu flower. Furthermore, they claim the border decorations feature a Ganesha Torna resembling an elephant trunk, and that the metal pinnacle on the main dome is actually shaped like a Shiva trident. They even point out a Gaushala, or cowshed, on the premises, which they argue makes zero sense for an Islamic mausoleum. But this brilliantly illustrates a core academic concept in architectural history, Indo-Islamic syncretism. This is the exact framework historians use to explain the very features those theorists are pointing out. See, when the Mughals built in India, they didn't just import purely foreign designs. They heavily relied on local Indian craftsmen, stonecutters, and artists. The result? An intentional, totally seamless blending of traditional Hindu-style motifs like the lotus flower or local dome structures right onto Islamic architectural forms. Furthermore, historians present an immense amount of counter-evidence to the temple theory. For instance, the monument features 14 chapters of the Quran intricately inscribed right into the marble by the master calligrapher Amanat Khan Shirazi. Experts also point out that those bulbous domes were heavily inspired by Timurid structures in Samarkand, like the Ghor Amir, and that the triple dome style is a distinctly Indian Islamic contribution. Plus, the massive construction effort employing thousands of workers and bringing in all that Makrano marble is heavily documented in imperial court orders spanning the 1630s. Section 3. 22 Locked Rooms and Architectural Clues. Let's move our investigation from the pages of history books to the physical structure itself. And that brings us to the famous number 22. If you've spent any time reading about the Taj Mahal online, you've definitely heard the rumors about the 22 locked rooms down in the basement. Speculation runs absolutely wild about what's hidden down there. But what is publicly documented? Well, authorities maintain that these are simply basement chambers historically kept closed for structural preservation and safety. It's actually a very common practice in massive, centuries-old monuments to keep foundational rooms sealed. When we compare the architectural claims directly, we see a really stark contrast in how things are interpreted. Oak's theory points to certain architectural features, like the lotus motifs on the domes or specific floral patterns, as proof of a Hindu temple's design. However, the mainstream archaeological view states that these are just classic examples of Indo-Islamic architecture, where local Indian motifs were seamlessly blended right into Mughal designs. And as for those 22 chambers, well, supporters of Oak's theory claim they hide ancient idols, while mainstream historians view them strictly as standard architectural foundation rooms. Section 4. The Science Question and Carbon Dating. So we have these conflicting architectural interpretations. Usually, when history and architecture are debated, we turn to science to break the tie, right? Let's see what the scientific pillar of our investigation reveals. A lot of the controversy online hinges on the idea of carbon dating. But here is where we need to be really precise. Radiocarbon dating is a fantastic scientific method, but it measures the age of organic material, things like wood, bone, or cloth. It literally cannot date inorganic stone or marble. So even if you carbon date a wooden door found in the Taj Mahal, it only tells you the age of that specific piece of wood, not when the massive marble structure itself was actually erected. So, the absolutely crucial point here is this. For an intellectually honest investigation, we have to look at what the lab results actually say. And right now, reliable carbon dating evidence proving the monument predates Shah Jahan is simply unavailable. To put it clearly, sufficient scientific evidence to establish the pre-Mughal claim is currently not available anywhere in the documented sources. Section 5. The courtroom angle and legal controversy. Now, if the laboratories haven't settled the debate for everyone, what about the law? Let's move our investigation from the realm of science straight into the courtroom. Over the years, several petitions have been filed in Indian courts asking for an investigation into the Taj Mahal's origins, or demanding that those locked rooms be opened. But the courts, relying heavily on affidavits from the Archaeological Survey of India, have consistently dismissed these petitions. The ASI maintains on official record that the Taj Mahal is a Mughal structure. The courts have essentially ruled that history should be evaluated by historians and archaeologists, not dictated by legal decrees based on unproven claims. It's really important that we separate legal facts from internet rumors here. Section 6. What is proven? Evidence versus claims. Now, let's bring all these pillars of evidence together, the history, the architecture, the science, and the law, to see exactly where we stand. Here is the breakdown. We have strongly supported evidence of Mughal construction. We have heavily disputed claims of a pre-existing temple. We have highly subjective interpretations of architectural motifs. And we have massive questions from the alternative theory that remain completely unproven. It is absolutely vital to understand the difference between hard evidence and subjective interpretation here. And this brilliantly illustrates the heart of our investigation. On one side, we have what is confidently known and supported by mainstream, documented archaeological consensus. On the other side, we have what remains fascinating, yet completely unproven speculation. We aren't here to force a sensational verdict on you, but rather to empower you with the clarity to see where the actual evidence points, versus where the theories begin. Which brings us to our final thought. The Taj Mahal remains a global icon. It's stunning in its beauty and so complex in its cultural footprint. But when we hear disruptive theories about our past, it forces us to ask a really important question. Should we investigate history through documented evidence or through assumption? Keep asking questions, keep demanding real evidence, and definitely keep exploring. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.